deep within the heart of the English countryside, where ancient legends and eerie folklore intertwine, a tale of hitchhiking horror unfolded on a moonless night. The winding roads meandered through lush, overgrown woods, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. John, a weary traveler, stood by the roadside, his thumb outstretched, hoping for a ride to escape the oppressive silence. The minutes ticked by like hours, and just as he began to lose hope, a pair of headlights emerged from the darkness. An old rickety car pulled over, and the driver, a man with a broad-brimmed hat that obscured his face, offered John a ride. The interior of the car was equally shrouded in shadow. The stranger introduced himself as Mr. Blackwood and explained that he was on his way to a remote village deep in the woods. John, desperate to get out of the eerie solitude of the roadside, accepted the offer and climbed into the car. As they drove deeper into the forest, the silence inside the vehicle became unbearable. Mr. Blackwood seemed reluctant to engage in conversation, and an uneasy tension hung in the air. The road grew narrower, and the trees pressed in on both sides, their twisted branches casting eerie, elongated shadows. John's anxiety intensified when he noticed a distinct smell permeating the car, a smell reminiscent of damp earth and decay. He couldn't quite place it, but it sent shivers down his spine. Eventually, they reached the village, a place that seemed to exist in a time long past. The quaint cottages appeared abandoned, their windows dark and lifeless. John felt an inexplicable urge to leave, but Mr. Blackwood assured him he would find accommodations for the night. Inside one of the cottages, John found himself in a dimly lit room, the walls adorned with strange symbols and faded portraits of people who looked as if they belonged to a different century. The feeling of unease grew more profound as Mr. Blackwood offered John a glass of a murky, mysterious liquid. With growing trepidation, John declined and insisted he should leave. But Mr. Blackwood's demeanor shifted from cordial to menacing in an instant. He advanced on John, his hat still obscuring his face. Panic surged through John as he fumbled to escape the eerie cottage. He burst out into the moonlit night, fleeing through the village as the shadows themselves seemed to close in around him. John's heart pounded in his chest as he made his way back to the car and sped away from the sinister village. Hours later, John reached a more inhabited area and sought refuge with the local authorities. He recounted his nightmarish encounter with Mr. Blackwood and the bizarre village hidden in the woods. Law enforcement officers accompanied him to the location, but to their shock, the village had vanished, as though it had never existed. The mystery of Mr. Blackwood and the eerie village remains unsolved to this day, a chilling reminder that the dark, ancient woods of the UK hold secrets and horrors beyond human comprehension. The next time you find yourself on a desolate road in the English countryside, be cautious of who you accept a ride from, for the past and the supernatural may be lurking just beyond the trees. As the sun dipped below the horizon on a misty evening in the remote countryside of the UK, a chilling unease began to settle over the land. The narrow, winding roads that cut through the dense woods were shrouded in darkness, and the occasional flickering street lamp offered little solace to those who dared to traverse this desolate stretch of asphalt. Sarah, a young woman with an adventurous spirit and a sense of wanderlust, found herself stranded at a desolate crossroads in the heart of this eerie landscape. Her car had broken down, and her phone had lost signal. The nearest town was miles away, and panic began to set in as she realized she was utterly alone in the black of night. With no other choice, Sarah decided to take the risky leap of hitchhiking. She extended her thumb, hoping for a passing Good Samaritan. Minutes turned into hours, and the darkness pressed in around her like a vice. Just as despair threatened to overtake her, the distant growl of an engine rumbled through the night. A vintage, rusted van pulled over, its headlights cutting through the heavy fog. The driver's window slid down, revealing a middle-aged man with a wild, disheveled beard and hollow eyes. "Need a lift, miss?" he inquired with a crooked grin. Sarah, though apprehensive, accepted the ride, relieved to escape the encroaching darkness. As she entered the van, she was greeted by an unsettling atmosphere. The air was thick, with an unidentifiable odor, and the interior of the vehicle was a chaotic jumble of tools, trash, and mismatched objects. The driver introduced himself as Edward and launched into a rambling monologue about the desolation of the area, the strange occurrences that took place at night, and the eerie folklore surrounding the woods they were driving through. Sarah began to feel a growing sense of unease as the tales grew darker and more unsettling. Despite her instincts urging her to jump from the moving van, Sarah remained silent, not wanting to provoke the erratic driver. The journey continued through the foggy maze of trees, each mile bringing them deeper into the heart of the sinister forest. As the van trundled along, a sudden chill ran down Sarah's spine as she noticed a series of strange symbols etched into the back of the driver's seat. They appeared to be cryptic, ancient markings, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were part of some ominous ritual. With every passing minute, the atmosphere grew more stifling, and Sarah's fear escalated. She noticed a distinct change in Edward's demeanor. His eyes darted around the cabin, and his incoherent muttering grew more menacing. Suddenly, the van shuddered to a halt in a remote clearing. Edward turned to Sarah with a sinister grin, revealing a set of yellowed, crooked teeth. "We've arrived," he hissed, his voice taking on an otherworldly tone. In that moment, a wave of terror washed over Sarah. She knew that she was in grave danger. Desperation kicked in as she fumbled to unbuckle her seatbelt and unlock the door. Her heart pounded in her chest as she pushed open the van door and leaped out, vanishing into the inky blackness of the forest. Branches clawed at her as she sprinted through the dense undergrowth. She could hear Edward's crazed laughter echoing through the trees behind her. Panic coursed through her veins, but her survival instincts drove her onward. Hours passed as Sarah stumbled through the woods, praying for a miracle. The moon cast eerie shadows, and strange, ghostly figures seemed to dance at the periphery of her vision. Her journey through the night felt like an eternity. Finally, Sarah's luck took a turn for the better. She stumbled upon a remote cottage, nestled deep within the woods. With the last of her strength, she knocked on the door, and an elderly couple, who had heard the commotion, took her in. As the police were called, Sarah recounted her harrowing experience. The officers went in search of Edward and the ominous van, but found no trace of either. It was as if they had disappeared into the haunted depths of the forest. Sarah's ordeal serves as a chilling cautionary tale for those who dare to hitchhike on the desolate roads of the UK. In the darkness of night, when the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, one can never be sure who, or what, might be lurking just around the bend, waiting to lead unsuspecting travelers into a nightmare from which they may never escape.